Hello.
If your cucumber plants look healthy at first, but then start giving you only a few small fruits or weak harvests, there's a good chance you're making the same mistake that thousands of gardeners make every year without even realizing it. Many people water their cucumbers, pull a few weeds, wait for the harvest, and then wonder why the plants never reach their full potential. The truth is that cucumbers can produce far more than most people think, but only when a few simple things are done correctly from the very beginning. Today, I want to share a method that was shown to me years ago and that many people still overlook. It costs almost nothing, takes only a minute to do, and some gardeners believe it helps their cucumber plants grow stronger and produce more large, juicy fruits throughout the season. But before I show you that simple trick, I want to ask you something. If you enjoy practical garden tips and simple methods that do not require expensive products, leave any reaction in the comments right now. It helps more people find these videos and lets me know that you enjoy this kind of content. Now let's get to the important part. The biggest mistake I see is that people focus only on feeding the plants while ignoring the basic needs that cucumbers cannot live without. You can add all the fertilizers you want, but if these foundations are missing, the harvest will never be what it could have been. Cucumbers love sunlight. They need warmth from morning until evening, and they grow best when they receive plenty of direct sun every day. They also need soil that is loose, rich, and full of organic matter. If the soil is hard and compacted, the roots struggle, and when the roots struggle, the whole plant struggles. Another thing many gardeners forget is watering. Cucumbers need regular moisture, but there is a right way and a wrong way to do it. Water should go near the roots, not all over the leaves. Wet leaves often create problems that are easy to avoid. At the same time, too much water around the roots can be just as harmful. When water sits around the roots for too long, plants become weak and diseases can appear. Finding that balance is one of the keys to a strong harvest. And there is one more simple detail that changes everything for cucumber plants, yet many people still ignore it. In a moment, I will explain exactly what it is and why it can make such a noticeable difference. The detail I am talking about is support. It sounds simple, but this is one of the biggest differences between an average cucumber patch and one that keeps producing healthy fruits for weeks. I still see many gardeners letting cucumber vines crawl across the ground because that is how they have always done it. At first, everything seems fine. The plants grow, the leaves spread, and little cucumbers begin to appear. Then problems slowly start showing up. The fruits sit on damp soil, some become dirty, some start rotting, and air cannot move freely through the leaves. Before long, diseases become more likely, and the harvest is not what it could have been. That is why I always recommend giving cucumbers something to climb. It does not need to be expensive. A simple net, a few stakes, or any sturdy support can make a huge difference. When cucumbers grow vertically, the leaves dry faster after rain, air moves through the plant more easily, and the fruits hang clean instead of lying on the soil. Many people are surprised when they see how much healthier their plants look after making this one change. The vines receive better light, the fruits are easier to find, and harvesting becomes much more comfortable. But support is only part of the story. Another mistake that quietly reduces harvests is planting cucumbers too close together. When young seedlings are small, it is tempting to fit as many as possible into one area. The problem comes later when the plants begin growing quickly. Suddenly, the leaves become crowded, air circulation drops, and every plant has to compete for light, water, and nutrients. I learned long ago that giving plants a little more room usually leads to a better harvest than trying to squeeze in extra plants. Strong, healthy vines need space to breathe. They need room for sunlight to reach the leaves and for fresh air to move around the stems. There is another habit that many gardeners skip because it seems unimportant. I am talking about loosening the soil around the plants from time to time. When the surface becomes hard after watering or rain, it can slow the movement of air and moisture into the root zone. A little gentle loosening helps keep the soil comfortable for the roots. And there is one more step that most people overlook completely. It takes only a few minutes, but it helps direct the plant's energy where it matters most. That simple step is something I never skip, and it leads directly to the homemade yogurt container trick I want to share next. The step I am talking about is regular care of the growing shoots. Many gardeners plant cucumbers, water them faithfully, and then simply let the vines grow wherever they want. At first, it seems harmless, but after a few weeks the plants can turn into a tangled mass of stems and leaves. When that happens, a lot of the plant's energy gets spent on extra growth instead of producing strong flowers and healthy cucumbers. I am not saying you need to spend hours working with every plant. In fact, the best approach is usually the simplest one. Every few days I walk through the garden and take a careful look at my cucumber vines. If I see weak shoots growing in awkward directions or parts of the plant becoming overcrowded, I gently guide the vines where I want them to grow. Sometimes I remove a small, unnecessary shoot. Sometimes I simply tie a stem to the support. These small actions keep the plant organized and help sunlight reach more leaves. It is one of those things that takes only a few minutes but often saves a lot of trouble later. Most people do not realize how important this can be until they compare two plants side by side. One is left completely unattended while the other receives simple, regular care. The difference becomes obvious. The cared-for plant often looks stronger, cleaner, and more productive. Years ago, an older gardener told me something that stayed with me. He said that cucumbers reward attention more than effort. At the time, I did not fully understand what he meant. Later, I realized he was right. You do not always need expensive products or complicated methods. Sometimes the biggest improvements come from noticing small details and acting before problems become serious. That brings me to the simple homemade trick I promised at the beginning. It is so easy that many people laugh when they first hear it. Yet I know gardeners who have been doing it for years and refuse to stop because they like the results they see in their beds. The interesting part is that it costs almost nothing because it uses something most people throw away without a second thought. In fact, many of us rinse it down the sink immediately after breakfast. The next time you finish a container of yogurt, do not rush to wash it out. What you do instead may become one of the simplest additions to your cucumber routine. And, before you try it, there is one important detail about how much water to use and how to apply it that makes all the difference. Here is exactly what I do. When a yogurt container becomes empty, I do not wash it immediately. Instead, I pour about half a liter of water into the container and shake or stir it well so that the small amount of yogurt left on the sides mixes with the water. There is usually more left inside the container than people realize. After a few seconds, the water becomes slightly cloudy. That is all you need. Then I take this mixture straight to the garden and pour a small amount around the base of my cucumber plants near the roots. Not on the leaves and not all over the plant, just into the soil where the roots can benefit from it. What I like about this method is its simplicity. You are not buying a special product. You are not mixing 5 different ingredients. You are simply using something that would otherwise be wasted. Many gardeners see this as a natural way to return a little extra nutrition to the soil. Some believe the remaining yogurt helps support beneficial activity in the soil and contributes to a healthier growing environment around the roots. Whether you have one cucumber plant or an entire row, it takes only a minute to do. The important thing is moderation. More is not always better. A small amount around the roots is enough. The goal is not to soak the area with yogurt water. The goal is simply to make use of the diluted leftovers in a practical way. I usually apply it as part of my normal garden routine and then continue watering and caring for the plants as usual. What I find interesting is that many people spend money on products while throwing useful things away every day without thinking about them. Years ago, I started paying more attention to simple household leftovers that could still have a purpose in the garden. Some worked well, and some were not worth the effort. This yogurt container method stayed in my routine because it is easy, quick, and costs nothing extra. Of course, no single trick will replace proper growing conditions. The plants still need sunlight, good soil, regular watering, and support. Those things come first. The yogurt water is simply an additional step that many gardeners enjoy using as part of an overall care routine. And there is something else that often surprises people. Even gardeners who know about this method sometimes make a mistake right after applying it. That mistake can reduce the benefits of all the work they have already done, and it is something worth paying attention to before the season reaches its most productive stage. The mistake I often see happens right after people start using a helpful method and notice a little success. They become excited and begin doing too much. It happens with watering, with feeding, and even with simple homemade solutions. Cucumbers are generous plants, but they still need balance. If the soil stays constantly wet because someone waters every day without checking the ground first, the roots can suffer. If fertilizers are applied too often, the plants may produce lots of leaves but fewer fruits. The same idea applies here. The yogurt water trick is meant to be a small addition to good garden care, not the entire strategy. I always remind people that healthy cucumbers are built on simple habits repeated consistently. One habit is checking the soil before watering. Push a finger into the ground near the plant. If the soil still feels moist below the surface, there may be no need to water immediately. Another habit is keeping the area around the plants clean and loose. Weeds compete for nutrients and moisture, and they often appear exactly when cucumbers need resources the most. Removing them regularly helps the plants focus their energy where it belongs. There is also another detail that many gardeners ignore once the vines begin producing heavily. They stop inspecting the plants closely. At the beginning of the season, everyone pays attention. Later, when fruits are appearing everywhere, people often assume the work is done. In reality, this is the moment when observation becomes even more important. I like to walk through the garden every few days and look carefully at the leaves, stems, and developing cucumbers. Small problems are much easier to deal with when they are discovered early. A yellow leaf, a damaged stem, or a vine that has slipped from its support can usually be corrected in minutes if caught in time. Years ago, an older gardener told me that large harvests rarely come from one big secret. They come from many small actions that seem insignificant by themselves. I have found that to be true again and again. Good sunlight, good soil, careful watering, proper support, space between plants, regular attention, and then small additions like the yogurt water method. Each piece helps build the final result. But there is one stage of the season that every cucumber grower looks forward to most. It is the moment when all these small efforts begin paying back in baskets full of fresh cucumbers. And that is exactly what I want to talk about next, because this is where many gardeners finally see the difference. This is the part of the season that makes all the effort worthwhile. There is something satisfying about walking into the garden early in the morning and seeing healthy cucumber vines covered with fresh green fruits hanging from the supports. The plants look strong. The leaves are full and healthy, and every few days there seems to be another batch ready to pick. That result does not usually come from one dramatic change. It comes from all those small habits working together over time. When cucumbers receive enough sunlight, when the soil stays loose and fertile, when watering is done carefully, and when the vines are supported properly, the plants can focus their energy on producing fruit instead of recovering from stress. This is where many gardeners begin noticing that the plants seem stronger than in previous years. The vines continue growing steadily, flowers keep appearing, and the harvest period often lasts longer than expected. I have seen people become genuinely surprised by how much they collect from only a few healthy plants. What I enjoy most is that none of these methods require expensive equipment or complicated schedules. Most of the work can be done during a few minutes each day while walking through the garden. A quick check of the soil, a look at the support system, removing a weed, guiding a vine back onto the net, using the diluted yogurt water from time to time instead of washing the container immediately. None of these actions are difficult, but together they create an environment where cucumber plants can perform at their best. One thing I always recommend is harvesting regularly. Do not leave mature cucumbers on the plant for too long. The more often you harvest, the more the plant tends to focus on producing new fruits. I learned this lesson many years ago when I accidentally missed several cucumbers hidden behind the leaves. Once they became oversized, the plant slowed down noticeably. Since then, I make a habit of checking carefully and harvesting on time. It keeps production moving forward and helps maintain the quality of the fruits. As the season continues, many gardeners begin noticing another benefit. Gardening becomes less stressful. Instead of constantly searching for new products or worrying about complicated solutions, they rely on a few simple routines that have already proven themselves. There is a certain confidence that comes from knowing what your plants need and providing it consistently. And before we finish, I want to share one final thought that ties everything together and explains why so many experienced gardeners continue using these simple methods year after year. When I look back at all the years I have spent growing cucumbers, one lesson stands out more than anything else. The best results usually come from simple things done consistently. Many people spend their time searching for complicated solutions while overlooking the basics that plants depend on every single day. Healthy cucumber plants need sunlight, warm, fertile soil, proper watering, good airflow, enough space, and reliable support. Those things will always matter. Once those foundations are in place, small additions like the yogurt container method become part of a practical routine that helps you make the most of what you already have. I like methods that save money and reduce waste. That is one reason I continue using the diluted yogurt water approach. Instead of throwing everything away immediately, I find a simple use for something that is already in my kitchen. It takes almost no effort, costs nothing extra, and fits naturally into normal garden care. Over the years, I have learned that gardening is often about paying attention to small opportunities. One extra minute today can make a noticeable difference weeks later when harvest time arrives. What I enjoy most is seeing the reward at the end of the season. Strong vines climbing their supports. Clean, healthy fruits hanging where they are easy to pick. Fewer problems with rot and disease. Baskets filling with fresh cucumbers that can be enjoyed at the table or shared with family and friends. That feeling never gets old, and the good news is that none of this requires special skills. Anyone can start with these simple habits and gradually improve their results season after season. If you found something useful in today's video, I would really appreciate your support. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss future gardening tips. Leave a comment and tell me how you grow your cucumbers or whether you have ever tried using leftover yogurt containers in the garden. I always enjoy reading about different experiences and ideas from other gardeners. And if you know someone who grows cucumbers, share this video with them. They might discover a simple method that helps them get a stronger harvest this year. Thank you for spending this time with me, and remember that sometimes the smallest garden habits lead to the biggest surprises. And in the next video, I will share another simple household item that many gardeners throw away even though it can still be useful in the garden.
Bye.